Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So as many people know, I just got back 5-6 days ago from being more than a month away. The month of May being spent at the Forest Refuge in Massachusetts, part of the IMS Forest Refuge Barre Center for Buddhist Studies complex there in Barre, Massachusetts. I had the good fortune of being on a retreat that was led by Ajahn Sucitto, one of the very senior monks in our tradition from England. And he's been teaching a fair amount in the United States the past number of years. And he's been a couple of times to the Forest Refuge, which is a long-term retreat center. People go and sign up for usually in month-long chunks to really deepen practice, delve into contemplation. So it was an opportunity for myself and also for Debbie, the long-term lay resident steward for the monastery, to practice with him. It's the first time for quite a long time that either of us have had the opportunity to just be on retreat for an extended period like that. And she was classed as a retreat yogi, one of the participants. I ended up being part of the it was sort of called the teaching team, although myself and the other monk who came to attend Ajahn Sucitto really actually didn't do any teaching, which was great. I really enjoyed that month of just listening to him. Had a few more duties, a little bit of interaction with some of the yogis, the retreatants, and a few other things happening, but generally it was a time to really not only enjoy and deepen my understanding of the practice through Ajahn Sucitto's ways of expressing it, which I've always very much appreciated, but also to have some time freer from the duties of being here at the monastery and attending to all the things that one needs to attend to in this position here. So to just have a break from that, to do walking meditation, sitting meditation, and enjoying the very, very good company of Ajahn Sucitto and the other monk that came along, Tan Indapanyo from Chithurst. Very nice, harmonious threesome, and just really settled quite nicely. Forest Retreat Center is an interesting place, I think, as a practice place for experienced Buddhist practitioners based on a similar style of how the retreats run at Insight Meditation Society there in Barre, but with a little bit less structure and guidance, actually a fair amount less, but still the usual patterns of the daily routine of morning chanting and meditation, breakfast, evening chanting and meditation. What's different for the yogis is that pretty much during the day there's not so much structured sitting and walking periods. People are more free to practice on their own schedules. But Ajahn Sucitto would give a talk almost every morning, so that was part of the routine. But it was all in silence, and a strong container, as in a traditional meditation retreat. One of the things that came up that I think was a special experience for many of the yogis was the monastic flavor that was brought to it with Ajahn Sucitto, and then of course the other two of us. And it's something that some of the yogis really hadn't experienced so much. The traditional style is to really hone in on the meditation practice itself, of course, the sitting and the walking. And there are many people who have done zillions of retreats that were on this one. All of them, many people who have been practicing 20, 30, 40 years even. A number of them were teachers of the Dhamma in their own local sitting groups. So there was no lack of meditation experience, but it was moving to see how moving it was for them to experience something that had a bit of a different flavor, that hearkened maybe more towards a flavor of the time of the Buddha as represented through the monastic Sangha. We would do not only the chanting, and I guess they do some chanting there, but we did probably a little bit more of that, and offering of candles and the usual slightly more devotional kinds of activities. But also had the particular flavor of doing the alms round on a daily basis. The food would be prepared, put out on a table, and Ajahn Sucitto decided to take the style of having the yogis take turns of actually putting the food directly into our bowls, rather than the way we normally do it, say here, where each of the food dishes is offered individually to some of the monastics, and then we come through in a line and help ourselves to proper quantities of what it is that we would like to have. So instead of doing that, we would walk up to the table where all the food was put out, and yogis would line up on the other side of the table and spoon quantities of food into the bowl, and we'd go down the line. And of course, it's always interesting to see what ends up in one's bowl. Sometimes people get nervous and aren't watching and put just a teeny little bit in, and that's it, that's what you get, because they're not quite sure how much quantity we want, or they put so much in that you can't eat it, or just the kind of mixture of different things and where they end up and how they kind of mix and move together is it's kind of a fun alternative. It's also good for the monks to sometimes experience that. But what was particularly moving was just the sense of awe and beauty that you could see. They were experiencing that sense of a deepening of faith in some ways, that because of this connection of being able to tangibly offer sustenance to some people who depend on that kind of offering. We can't go and just take our food. We can't just walk up and take it if it hasn't been offered to us. So we depend literally on the kindness, generosity, and physical motion of people to put food in our bowls so that we can eat for the day. And that was a new experience for a lot of people, just to see that level of mutual dependence that that alms round demonstrated, represented. And there was one man who he had some experience with monasticism, but apparently not ever on an alms round like that. And he must have been tapping into something from a long time ago. I don't know how many lifetimes or whatever, but just something snapped in him, triggered in him, to the point where he would just almost uncontrollably start crying. And it was a good kind of crying, not he wasn't losing it, but it was piti, rapture. He just was sent into this state of rapture at watching this process happen. He was so moved, and he just couldn't contain the tears. And this happened a number of times, particularly towards the beginning of the retreat. Just, it was uncontrollable. And he would apparently explain to Ajahn Sucitto, he just says, I can't control it. It's just, it's just so moving. It's a visceral reaction. And apparently he even had a vision, a flash of some sort of a line of about 100 monks in there receiving the food in that way. So, all we could think of as, well, this is tapping into something very deep that he must have experienced before. And there were a number of aspects of the retreat shepherded by Ajahn Sucitto's teachings that were just so heart-opening and moving to the people, the style of teaching, the actual content, the encouragement, and the fact that we started with a kind of a sharing circle in the beginning and a sharing circle in the end, which aren't usually traditional parts of the forest refuge retreats. So you could tell from many of the people and from the sharings that this was so special. It broke a barrier for many people of access to that very strong, positive emotional response. It really touched the heart and opened up some channels that people really hadn't felt before, because sometimes the practice of meditation can get a bit dry, the way it's taught and practiced in retreat centers. To some extent, it's a technique that, in a practice that's taken a bit out of context of the whole full range of what the path is. The path can be the Noble Eightfold Path, including all the right livelihood and the sharing right livelihood in the monastic sense, monastics and laity mixing together, and that the traditional aspect that brings devotion and the development of faith on a very deep level, that I find is crucial to my practice. If there weren't a context, if there weren't a history, the stories of all the different people, the culture at the time of the Buddha, and what that represented, and the depth of meaning that comes from having this monastic presence, these what sometimes are referred to as rituals, and in a sense they are, but not held to or believed in as transcendent qualities in themselves, but means of touching the heart on a deep level in a way that just conceptual understanding and watching the in and out breathing, ways that places that doesn't reach. So it makes me think a fair amount about the quality of faith, saddha, and that really as it's expressed in some of the teachings, we talk about entering the stream entry into this practice towards the goal. That area of understanding, that place of understanding where one is so unshakably established in the practice, even though one hasn't attained the goal, the complete goal of liberation, or the goal of complete liberation, but one is firmly established to the point where there's no turning back, is this unshakable faith. In fact, that's often how it's described, the qualities of somebody who has entered the stream and without the possibility of turning back, is one who has unshakable faith in the Buddha, unshakable faith in the Dhamma, unshakable faith in the Sangha, or unshakable conviction, if you will, faith conviction, as well as a complete commitment, inability to break the five precepts, impeccable in virtue. But this unshakable conviction, unshakable faith, is a hallmark of somebody who's solidly planted in the practice, and there's no further wavering. There can be a lot of work still left to do, still bases of greed, hatred, delusion, the underlying tendencies that take much more time to uproot. But there's no question that this is the way to do it. This is the path to leading to that freedom. So we can ask ourselves, what is it that obstructs us from experiencing this kind of unshakable conviction, this kind of unshakable faith? What is it that gets in the way from us having that kind of depth of experience? And classically, it's talked about in the teachings as the 10 fetters towards complete liberation, but the first 3 fetters, the first 3 obstructions in that list are what obstruct one from establishing that complete conviction and assurance in experiencing the path and the fruits. The first one being Sakkaya Ditthi, personality view, the view of I am this body, I am these feelings, I am these mental states, this identification with what we call the 5 khandhas, the 5 aggregates of experience of body and mind. Identification with that in the sense that there is this inherent being, me, myself, that experiences this body that is ours, or that identifies with this body and mind. That's one of the obstructions. Another obstruction is the Silabhata Paramasa, the attachment to rites and rituals, sometimes rules and observances, things, external kinds of activities that we might engage in that sometimes get confused as actually having significant meaning, that doing them in and of themselves is sufficient to develop deep understanding and liberation. We engage in certain devotional activities and routines, precepts, practices, but the Buddha said that if you believe that those in and of themselves will result in realization of the path, then that's an obstruction. And then the third one in this list is vicikicca, the skeptical doubt, is the third fetter, third obstruction to developing complete faith in the path. And it was interesting because Ajahn Sucitto was talking about these during one of the talks, and he, so I guess, or maybe somebody asked, I don't know if somebody asked him a question, but it came up somehow, which in his mind was the most important of those three. And I was expecting him to say Sakkaya Ditthi, the personality view, the view I am this body, I am this mind. And his answer was vicikicca, doubt. Skeptical doubt was the most significant fetter. I mean, they're all kind of they're all intertwined, of course, but because that doubt, that experience of uncertainty as to the path, is actually what needs to be overcome to establish oneself with unshakable faith, unshakable conviction. Doubt has to be overcome. When doubt is completely overcome, then the result is this unshakable conviction in the path, and the teacher, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the people that are pursuing it, the Sangha. So I thought, oh, that's something to reflect on. How does that? How do the three of those work together? How does the elimination of doubt become the primary fetter, primary obstruction to overcome? And it made sense as I contemplated it more too. It made a lot of sense because what we're looking to do essentially is to familiarize ourselves with and practice diligently the teachings and the training to the extent where we realize that this is a complete path that the Buddha put out there. That little by little we get enough feedback from being diligent, being patient, and over years even, trying on certain aspects of the training, starting with the beginning of sila, virtue, and evaluating for ourselves over and over again, what's the state of my mind as I practice this? Is it developing in wholesome ways? Am I developing wholesome qualities? Am I eliminating unwholesome qualities that obstruct peace of mind and support long-term happiness? So as we go along, little by little, with the path, the conviction starts to grow, the faith starts to grow, that, well, if this works, maybe the rest of it does too. I may haven't experienced the depth of freedom and understanding that can come with sustained practice and the realization of absolute and complete liberation. I haven't gotten there yet, but so far it seems to work. So my faith becomes firmer and firmer, my conviction becomes firmer and firmer that this is working, this is the way to go. The obstruction or the fetter of Sakkaya Ditthi, personality view, oftentimes I think as even people who have been practicing for some time, we get caught it's easy to get caught in this mode of, even if we don't believe it explicitly, even if we know better on an intellectual basis, we operate from this sense that, at least in regard to this self-view, this experience of self, which is so deeply ingrained, a deeply ingrained perception, we operate from this kind of subterranean, subconscious paradigm that there is a self that I need to get rid of. And that if I do certain contemplations, if I practice meditation in a certain way, then this sense of me, this sense of mine, will go away. This self that I operate under will go away. So you're subtly believing, if you don't explicitly believe, at least subtly operating under this thing of, I am somebody who has to do something so that I can get rid of my self-view, which, as you can see just from the way I phrase that, it's a real, oxymoron. We were talking about that in the car today. It's a contradiction in terms that one has this sense of me, of I, needing to do something so that I can get rid of me. It just reinforces that whole conundrum that we get into of personality view, self-view, and keeps us from letting go of that obstruction, letting go of that fetter. Similarly, Sila Bhattaparamasa, the attachment to rites and rituals, is a similar kind of mind state, I think. It's just externalized rather than internalized. Rather than internalizing this me that I have to do something to get rid of, it's there are certain rites and rituals or techniques that I can use, even certain methods, if you will, of meditation that I can do, and I take refuge in them. And just by performing these particular motions of body or mind, whether it's more like making offerings or lighting candles or incense, or whether it's doggedly sticking to a particular technique, just thinking that in itself, that action in itself will result in freedom, result in liberation. That belief is what I would think of as Sila Bhattaparamasa, attachment to rites and rituals. So it's an externalization of this self-view in a way. And if we can start to just learn to, again, through trial and error and patience and commitment, if we can learn to just trust in the path, just trust in putting our attention into the qualities, the attitudes, the certain mind states, the precepts, the acts of generosity, the teachings that the Buddha gives us. If we just get out of the way, if we can just get our concept of self out of the way, just step away from me having to do something, and then just do it, just be it, just have faith that the path itself, faith in the path, will take us to where, to take us to that freedom. Then the Sila Bhattaparamasa, the Sakkaya Ditthi, the self view, the personality view, the attachment to external forms or practices, as time goes on, that just starts to fade away. That sense of needing to rely on a reference point of me or mine or externally certain actions will start to fall away if we can just learn to have faith, have conviction through practice and through successful practice, that just let go of expectations, let go of timelines, let go of a self who's involved, let go of trying to be in control and charge, but have the faith to continuously use the teachings to direct oneself towards these wholesome mind states that eventually will lead and result in freedom. So that was kind of my understanding of that comment, that elimination of skeptical doubt is the primary importance in abandoning those three fetters. And from that can emerge this unshakable, you've experienced it so much that it becomes unshakable confidence in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. You have this realization, this understanding that the Buddha's discovery of this path and his teaching of it, it's the real deal. It will, even if you haven't experienced it, you have the confidence that it takes you to that full place of freedom. That the teachings themselves were not only the path, but the way that they were elucidated and expounded, and that it's a complete path. There's nothing missing from it. And that the Sangha, the people who are committed to doing this, both those who have had fruition of realization to some extent or another, and those who are on the path, that taking refuge in these people, allowing ourselves to learn from them, is an unshakable realization, unshakable confidence in the people who are devoted to the path and the practice. So, what are some steps, what are some qualities that we can surround ourselves with or reflect on to help move us in that direction? What are sort of the necessary ingredients to help establish that sense of unshakable confidence, faith, entering the stream of Dhamma? The Buddha talks about four, which probably could be expanded into many different ones, but four basic ones. And the first being that reliance on good company of Kalyanamitta, spiritual friends, associating with wise people. Because if we surround ourselves with people who are skeptical, who aren't interested, who don't really have a sense that there's a path to a greater sense of freedom and long-term contentment and happiness and peace, if we're hanging around people who just aren't interested in that and don't associate with like-minded folks, people who are interested, then we're social animals, we're social beings, we're easily influenced by the people we're around. And it's hard to maintain that sense of confidence or to develop that sense of confidence unless we're in the company of people who will do that. You know, it doesn't mean we have to abandon all of the people in our lives who don't maybe hold so strongly to a particular interest in spiritual development, but at the least we need to nurture and establish relationships with some people in our lives who do have that aspiration, and as much as we can to be with them, to spend time with them, and to allow ourselves to be immersed in that kind of goodness of being around spiritual friends. And hopefully some of them are people who have been practicing and can share some of their understanding and teachings. And if not, there's lots of good stuff in teachings in print now and audio that we can work towards the second quality that we need to bring into our lives, that of listening, and listening to the teaching, listening to the Dhamma, hearing the Dhamma. So we use the dependence on our spiritual friends to help share what they've learned point us towards teachings that will be useful, and to take the time to read, to listen, to have fruitful conversation with others, so that we get to learn more about what the path is and how to incorporate it into our lives, both in terms of meditation retreats, which some people are able to take, but even more so and more importantly in our daily lives, because this is where the rubber hits the road, so to speak, is in our daily lives. Meditation retreats offer snapshots of a deepening of meditation practice, but they're not of great use unless we continue it and carry it into our lives with the daily practice of precepts and generosity, giving, and doing other things of body, speech, and mind that uplift us, keep us in the direction we want to go. So learning about that, practicing with getting to understand the teachings, and then bringing it into the third quality of yoniso manasikara, wise attention. Also, wise reflection. So we take the teachings that we've learned from our good friends, we take them and we consider them, we roll them around, we reflect on them, we see how we can use them and apply them. We put our attention, we make sure that we put our attention on qualities that we want to develop, and then also recognizing when we're moving into unwholesome qualities, things that pull us away from the precepts or from peace of mind. And we learn to identify them through noticing where our attention is taking us. And skillfully acknowledging the ones that take us to unwholesome places and saying, okay, not going to do that. I'm going to turn my attention to something that will take me to a place of peace based on what I've heard the teachings tell me, what to put my focus on. Put my focus on precepts, on non-harming. Put my focus on establishing kind, generous, no ill will, non-angering mind states, thoughts and perceptions that will gladden the mind, that will open the mind, and establish a sense of well-being. So it's so important where we put our attention. The Buddha called yoniso manasikara, appropriate attention, the most important internal quality that we can develop to take us along the path. Coincidentally, the most important external quality is that quality of kalyanamitta, spiritual friends. So with appropriate attention, proper attention to dropping what's unskillful, turning away from that, and attending to what is skillful, we then can also move into that fourth aspect of practice that will establish us in faith, strongly in confidence, as practicing Dhamma in accordance with Dhamma, so that we take what we've learned, we've switched our attention to that which is skillful, and we then apply it. We put it into practice. We walk the talk. We keep on doing it, and we try to be aware of when we're picking up some practice that's not part of the goal, something that will take us down a side street and get us diverted, even though we think it might be something useful. We can evaluate that in terms of what we know from the teachings and say, well, is this in accord? Is this in accord with what I've learned? Is this in accord with what the Buddha said is the path and the result? And if it seems like we're moving away from that, then we reverse. There's never a wrong turn that has been taken for so long that we can't turn back and go back to where we know we're on firm ground and then go back from there, go straight from there. We can always retrace our steps and practice in accord with Dhamma. So using those four qualities and nurturing those is what will eventually, if we make that commitment, little by little, just by trying bits and pieces for periods of time, seeing the results and feeling reassured, and our confidence will grow. And at some point, we can get to that point where we know maybe we haven't completed the path, but we can see that the path that we are picking up from the Buddha is the right way to steer our lives. And then this becomes firm and unshakable. And we turn ourselves over to that. And as we turn ourselves over to that and just trust in it, we can start to let go of that sense of me, a sense of I needing to do something to get rid of this whole sense of myself, my problems, my issues, my obstructions, and just let the path do its work. So I guess that's just a summary of some sort of one of the aspects of this time back at Forest Retreat that really struck me strongly, the sense of faith and the fact that we are part of a tradition that reaches back to the time of the Buddha, and the symbol that creates, the connection with a very true teaching that's been practiced by many, many, many beings to great success, to great fruition, and how to really just learn to get out of the way and let it do its work as the basis for developing a very, very strong conviction that this is what we want to do with our lives. So I'll leave that for this evening's reflection.